In the year 1900, a team of Greek sponge divers, sheltering from a storm off the remote island of Antikythera, made a discovery that would rewrite the history of technology. At the bottom of the sea, they found the ghostly remains of an ancient Roman shipwreck, a treasure trove of marble statues and bronze sculptures that had lain undisturbed for 2,000 years. But amongst the priceless art, they recovered something else. A lump of corroded bronze, about the size of a large book, so calcified and fused together that it was initially mistaken for a rock. For months, it sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, an unremarkable piece of debris from a spectacular find. And then, one day, it cracked open, and the world got its first glimpse of an object that should not exist. Inside the corroded mass, an archaeologist named Valerio Stais saw something impossible. Not a solid chunk of metal, but a complex assembly of interlocking gears, some as small as a fingernail, their teeth precisely cut. He saw faint inscriptions, circles, and scales. This was not a rock. This was a machine. But what kind of machine? The initial consensus was that it must be a much later object, perhaps a medieval clock that had somehow fallen onto the ancient wreck site. The alternative was simply too radical to consider. That the ancient Greeks, 2,000 years before the great cathedral clocks of Europe, had possessed the knowledge to build a mechanical device of such staggering complexity. The object was an anomaly, an outcast of history, and for the next 50 years, it was largely ignored, its secrets remaining locked in a prison of corrosion. The painstaking process of understanding the Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, is a story of obsession, a multi-generational effort by historians, physicists, and engineers to peer inside that calcified lump. Early researchers, like the physicist Derek J. de Sola Price, dedicated their lives to it. Using early X-ray and gamma-ray imaging in the 1970s, Price began to painstakingly map the gears. He counted the teeth on the gears, traced ear connections, and began to suspect its true purpose. This was not a clock for telling time. This was something far more profound. This was a calculator for the cosmos. But it was in the early 21st century that the true genius of the device was revealed. Using cutting-edge X-ray tomography and advanced surface imaging, a new generation of researchers was able to digitally reconstruct the machine in its entirety, peeling back the layers of corrosion to reveal its internal workings in stunning detail. What they found was mind-boggling. The Antikythera Mechanism was an analog computer of almost unbelievable precision. It consisted of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, all housed within a wooden case with bronze dials on the front and back. The front dial was a zodiac calendar, tracking the position of the sun and moon against the constellations. It wasn't just a simple 365-day calendar. It included a leap year cycle, something the Romans themselves struggled to implement hundreds of years after this device was built. But the true complexity was hidden on the back. Two large spiral dials working in harmony revealed a staggering depth of astronomical knowledge.
The upper back dial of the Antikythera Mechanism is a masterpiece of ancient science. It is a 19-year metonic cycle calendar, a complex system used by the Babylonians and Greeks to reconcile the solar year with the lunar months. This allowed the user to predict the dates of religious festivals and civil events that were based on the lunar calendar. But it did more than that. Nested within this spiral was a smaller dial that tracked a 76-year Ecliptic cycle, an even more accurate refinement of the metonic cycle. And even more astonishingly, another small dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, including the most famous of all, the Olympiad. This device didn't just track the heavens, it tracked the rhythm of Greek civilization itself. The lower back dial is where the mechanism transcends from a brilliant calendar to a true predictive computer. This dial is a Saros cycle predictor. The Saros cycle is an 18-year, 11-day, 8-hour period that can be used to predict eclipses, both solar and lunar. The inscriptions on the dial not only indicated when an eclipse was likely to occur, but what color it might be and at what time of day. This was not just astronomy, it was a tool of immense social and political power. An astronomer who could accurately predict an eclipse, an event seen as a powerful omen from the gods, would command incredible respect and authority. The mechanism's most subtle and brilliant feature, however, was how it modeled the irregular orbit of the moon. The ancient Greeks knew that the moon's speed across the sky appears to change. Sometimes it moves faster, sometimes slower. This is because its orbit is not a perfect circle, but an ellipse. To account for this first anomaly, the unknown genius who designed the mechanism employed a breathtakingly clever system. They used a pin-and-slot mechanism, where one gear drives another not from its center, but from an off-center pin moving within a slot. This ingenious device, which would not be seen again in clockmaking for another 1,000 years, perfectly translated the uniform rotation of the gears into the variable speed needed to accurately model the moon's complex motion. This was not just good engineering, it was the physical embodiment of a sophisticated astronomical theory. It proved that the ancient Greeks not only observed the heavens, but they understood its complex mechanics well enough to replicate them in bronze. So who were the ancient geniuses behind it? The device itself offers clues. The inscriptions are in Koine Greek, and the game cycle mentions games celebrated in Corinth and its colonies, suggesting a possible origin in that part of the Greek world, perhaps even Syracuse, the home of the legendary mathematician and engineer Archimedes himself. The Roman writer Cicero mentions a similar device, a bronze sphere that modeled the heavens, built by Archimedes and brought to Rome after the siege of Syracuse in 212 BCE. Could the Antikythera Mechanism be a descendant of that Archimedean tradition, a later, more complex version of his work? We can never know for sure, but the level of astronomical and mathematical knowledge required to conceive of such a device places its creator in the absolute top tier of ancient scientific minds, a peer of Archimedes, Hipparchus, and the great astronomers of Rhodes. The philosophical motivation was likely to demonstrate the order and predictability of the cosmos, a central tenet of Greek philosophy. But the practical motivation was clear: to have a portable mechanical oracle that could predict the future of the heavens and, by extension, the events on Earth. The existence of the Antikythera Mechanism is a historical thunderclap. It shatters our comfortable, linear narrative of technological progress. The level of precision engineering and theoretical knowledge displayed in this single object is not supposed to exist in the 2nd century BCE. Nothing even approaching its complexity appears in the historical record again for over 1,000 years, until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. This raises the most profound and unsettling question of all. Where are the others? The Antikythera Mechanism cannot have been a singular, miraculous invention created in a vacuum. Such a complex device must have been the culmination of a long tradition of mechanical engineering, a tradition of which we have lost almost every other trace. There must have been simpler predecessors and perhaps even more complex successors. What happened to this knowledge? Was it a closely guarded secret held by a small school of astronomers and engineers? Was it lost in the fire that destroyed the Library of Alexandria? Or did the rise of the Roman Empire, with its focus on civil and military engineering, lead to a decline in this kind of abstract theoretical technology? The mechanism's lone existence challenges our understanding of the ancient world. It suggests that our historical narrative is not just incomplete, but that it may have a massive, continent-sized hole in it. It forces us to wonder what other technological heights the ancient world might have reached, and what innovations could have followed if this knowledge hadn't been lost to time. What would the world look like today if the Industrial Revolution had begun 1,000 years earlier? The echoes of the Antikythera mechanism are found in our own modern technology. Its system of differential gearing used to calculate the difference between the solar and lunar cycles is a direct conceptual ancestor of the analog computers of the 20th century. The very idea of a machine that takes an input, processes it through a series of mechanical steps, and produces a predictive output is the foundational principle of all computing. Reverse engineering its complexity has not only taught us about the past, but has inspired modern engineers, with at least one major watchmaker creating a wristwatch-sized tribute to its intricate design. In the end, the Antikythera mechanism is more than just a clever gadget. It is a message in a bottle, a ghost from a lost world of technological sophistication. It stands as a testament to the enduring, timeless ingenuity of the human mind and our unceasing desire to understand our place in the cosmos. It is a humbling reminder that history is not a straight line, but a winding path with lost branches and forgotten peaks, and it leaves us with a tantalizing, almost romantic possibility that somewhere, buried in the sand or lying in the silent darkness of the deep sea, other wonders are waiting, other impossible objects that will once again force us to reevaluate everything we think we know about the past. The ancient world is still full of secrets. What does the existence of the Antikythera mechanism tell you about the knowledge we may have lost to time? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. And if you believe that history is the ultimate detective story, consider subscribing to continue our journey into the mysteries of the past.